play around with it.
Wait, so I have a question.
Makeup looks bomb. He's so great. So the light is being different. I would, even if you want to shake it out, I don't mind.
Welcome to Smart as Sexy, the podcast where we discuss self-development, love, business, spirituality, and becoming a smarter, sexier human. I am your host, Kelsi.
And I'm Celeste. Welcome to our show, y'all. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe, send to a friend, and leave us a review. I'm so excited to introduce today's guest, Annalie Howling. She is an amazing performance coach, and we're going to be discussing grief, shame, loneliness, healing, and a bunch of steps that you can take to become a better version of yourself. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you. It's an absolute pleasure.
It was such perfect timing because you were in town.
Yes, on a visit to LA, and then the very serendipitously, the universe has delivered today. 100%.
That was incredible. Yeah, because she doesn't even live in the United States.
I know. Yeah, we're really, really excited. This is very fun. You are also our first female guest. So this is going to be fun. I feel like our fans have been waiting for a female. We always bring on men, but this is exciting.
Sisterhood is strong.
Yeah.
It is. Okay, so I'm super excited to get into your background and get into the conversation, but we have to start the same way that we always do. So we start with something called Good News Minute, which is just something good going on in your life right now, recent, could be anything, but anything you want to share.
Sure. So I think actually it may link into sort of a bit of my background, but I think, and I need to check, I think it's 10 years since I sort of lived in California myself. It was San Francisco, North Bay, when I came to do coach training. And I'd had a burnout. I'm sure we'll go into this, but I'm fairly sure it's 10 years. So this is like my full circle. It really is. This week is my full circle, really serendipitous moment for me bringing my business here to launch it. And I'm really helping people rather than 10 years ago when I turned up like super British and really buttoned up and like into California to even begin to try and unpack this thing that was coaching and change my life. So yeah, it feels that's a really, really happy thing for me this week. It's been amazing.
Yay.
Congratulations. 10 years.
I know. 10 years is a lot. I feel like when you look back at a decade of your life, it's like, I feel like every day, like you feel like nothing changes. And then you look back and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Everything is different.
Yes. My mom and I were just having that conversation. You feel like, I don't really feel like anything's new. And then you look back over an extended period of time. You're like, wow.
Yeah.
I'm actually a completely different person than I used to be.
Yeah. Seriously. Okay. Well, congrats. And thank you for sharing it with us. What's your... I was going to say, what's your sexy? What's your good news minute?
Okay. My good news minute is probably the same as your good news minute. We just had our first ever Smart as Sexy live panel. And it was honestly so incredible. There are so many things that, of course, we want to improve on for like the next time. But for our first ever live moderating experience, I feel like we crushed.
Yeah. I agree.
I feel like we did an amazing job, and I'm really, really proud of us, even from like the growth and the evolution of Smart as Sexy, like where we started the podcast sitting on our floor and Celeste crying because she couldn't figure out how to edit the podcast episode. And so it just felt really cool last night to have so many incredible women speaking on, their thoughts, and not even just like, oh, what is it like to be a female, but like, what are their thoughts on like the business industry as a whole?
Yeah.
That felt big to me.
And I loved how last night we didn't even talk about really being like a woman. It was just like, talk about your journey, like separate from being a woman, like it wasn't about being the fact that you did it as a woman. It was just like, tell us, kind of disassociate from that for a minute.
Yeah,
and
just like, okay,
yeah,
you're a woman. What has been your experience, not harping on like the difficulties of being a woman in business.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. Okay. Well, that was also mine.
Okay.
So
we shared.
Okay. So I guess to kind of start out, can you tell us and tell our listeners, like, What is a performance coach?
Of course, yeah. So performance coach is something that I do, which is with people's mindset. So I work extensively in golf, for example, some of the biggest industries that I work in, both male and female golfers. And, you know, these individuals, they're athletes for one, but also they're unbelievably technically talented. I mean, they've been practicing every element of their game for years. You know, mastery is 10,000 hours. So you do anything and apparently, you know, 10,000 hours, you've mastered it. I mean, these guys and girls have done this forever. And so technically they're fantastic, but at some point they may start to experience anxiety, performance anxiety as it's sometimes known, though I work using a lens of social phobia instead, which is actually how other phobias show up in sort of the world. And then if it was maybe corporate, it might be public speaking. That's a performance anxiety, and that's where you might need a performance coach to step in as well. Anywhere where you just sort of really think, it sounds a bit like your panel yesterday, you know, that real celebration and like taking up space and claiming.
Yes.
And I think a lot of us can be doing something, doing it well, you know, we maybe suffer with the inner critic imposter syndrome, but where are we perhaps not really taking up that space that we could be? And then sometimes it can start showing up in different ways. And maybe that's sort of anxiety. It might be thinking that there's certain things that we can't do. Or I think quite often, I'd love to know what you both think about this. I think we can get in our own way because we think we ought to be like someone else. So maybe in golf, well, there's that player and they're terrific at this particular part of their game. I need to be more like them.
Yeah.
Or, you know, in corporate, I've just heard Celeste speak and she's amazing. And I feel really self-conscious because I'm not as confident as her and my voice doesn't sound as good as yours. Or, you know, so I think that quite a lot of the time we can get into our own way when we are comparing and thinking we should do it better.
Well, I do want to say I wish that I spoke with you before the panel because it was my first time speaking live and I threw up before because I was so nervous. So I'm like, if we could have had this conversation yesterday, I would have picked your brain on some tips for that because I was freaking out all day.
That's so interesting though, because I do think that comparing ourselves to others can obviously in some small ways push us to better ourselves, but also can make us feel terrible about who we are, even though we're not them. And that's just such an interesting thing because as newer podcast hosts, we spend a lot of time watching other podcasters to see how they're doing things. And there's really popular podcast hosts, call her daddy, Shay or Jay Shetty. And so I think we watch them and we try to, of course you want to like emulate what they're doing, but then you also want to be your own individual. And so I think that's really interesting. Even with the golf thing, I was watching Full Swing with my boyfriend, that new Netflix documentary. And it is extremely challenging for those guys when they start kind of falling off. They're not doing as well. They look at the younger up and coming guys coming in that are playing golf. There's so much comparison.
There is always someone ready to take your place. I've worked with a female racing driver, motorsports, you know, and to get good at what you do, you have to crash into a wall incredibly fast because you need to learn your limits. So the thing is, that's really expensive with those cars. And then the same in, say, football. You may be working with someone, so soccer. So you may be working with someone that would be going into a tackle, say, and they might get an injury. And exactly to your point, then they're out because they're recovering. There is 10 other guys ready to take his place, you know, that are amazing, younger, coming through. Honestly, the next time they're back and they're healed and they've got the same opportunity to go in and tackle for this game, are you going to do it the same?
Right.
Are you going to go in as hard? You should, because you need to be playing at the top level, elite of anything. You need to be quite risky and, you know, doing things and putting your voices out there and, you know, going into this tackle. But in your mind can start creeping in. But if I do that and I have another 3 months on the bench, then I'm going to get dropped again. And then this guy's getting even more practice and the fans start liking him more and
Yeah.
Hi.
Right. And it's so interesting too, because I feel like we watch other people and we like see the way other people react to them and then we internalize that also. Like, am I getting the same reaction from my friends, my family, my audience? And do I need to, you know, switch over into maybe their energy? We actually have had a conversation about this on the podcast before about why it is so important to find your own essence, you know, because you are you for a reason. So I think that's also like something for anybody listening. Like, do you have any advice on that? Like how somebody can just find their own essence and kind of like be more confident in themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the authenticity, if I go back to sort of my good use of my 10 years, honestly, when I first came to the States, I'm very type A, had a big corporate job. I've got an MBA in economics, got all the stuff, and I came here to do coaching. And in my head, genuinely, I thought, oh, it's all right. I'll be able to, I won't need to do it. As in, like, I won't need to really show up. I won't need to be vulnerable. I'll be able to streamline through this like everything else. And oh no. So yes, I did learn the curriculum, and yes, I learned all the tools, and yes, I've qualified, but you turn up and you will be crawling through the embers of your like soul and being witnessed by a group of strangers. And I've got to tell you, as a British, very at the time, repressing my vulnerability from my old career and like really hiding myself behind layers of armor to just not show anything, because it was the only way I could cope with my old job and my old life. The authenticity was a word that stuck in my throat. I used to be like, oh God, authenticity. Oh, it's such a horrible term that gets bandied around. The reason I thought it was horrible, the reason I would say that, is because I was afraid of it. And the second you start doing it, and the second you start actually saying how you're feeling, like I open every single talk that I do ever with how are you feeling? And you're not allowed to say good, fine, or okay. And we could do it now if you were up for it. We could answer honestly, because it's quite interesting.
Yeah,
when you
that's
don't
such
say
a
that.
it's also interesting even for me to ask myself that.
Well, that's what I mean. So if we do that, if I'm allowed to hijack you both,
for sure. So I can't, I'm not allowed to say good,
fine, or okay.
Fine or okay. Feeling? How are you feeling? I'm very tired from last night, but I'm also very inspired and excited to do more with this podcast. Kelsi and I, we also own a business called Viper. We own an experiential talent agency, and we've been in kind of a slow season just because of the economy is hitting our clients really hard, and it's been raining nonstop in LA. So we work in events and nightlife. It's been so slow. So I've just been lacking like inspiration and motivation because our work's been really slow. So I'm finally feeling like more inspired, but I'm also like drained at the same time. So I'm like kind of coexisting as like in like a bubble of inspiration and like a bubble of being very drained and like burnt out. If those two things make sense at the same time. What do you have for us?
I'm with you on that level of exhaustion. I'm also I feel inspired and excited for the evolution of Smart is Sexy and like where we've now decided to kind of take the podcast and the brand as a whole. But I have an underlying level of stress, and sometimes it's like really boiling hot, like it's like a pot of water where it's like sometimes it's like you're boiling, and other times it's just like a little light simmer. So I have that, and again I think it comes with the territory of starting something, having a business, wanting to be a good leader. But I definitely feel it's with you on like excited. Both. I feel both. I feel both things.
Yeah. And I think something too, like at least in my perspective as a founder, it's hard to know like when you need to like grow and be a better version of yourself versus when you need to just believe in yourself more. It's like, which one is it? Do I need to be better? Like, should I be working harder, or do I need to give myself more credit? And I never know which one it is. Yeah. I don't think I've ever known. Yeah. I'm always super hard on myself. So I'm like, which one is it?
I agree with you for sure.
So the reason that we do that, the reason that I asked you both, and thank you both for showing up and sharing that, the reason that we do it is so that you are both in business together and you're doing other things together, and we're in this room together right now. And thank you for saying what you did, because now I know. And I would actually say, if you feel the energy, I know it's the three of us, we've sort of gone down a layer of connection into being deeper connected together. Yeah. Because I see you both.
Right.
And I feel it, I'm jet lagged. I miss my daughter. I feel quite guilty. As much as I love the work that I've been doing, I've sat through 4 sessions of chronic sexual assault over the last couple of days.
Dark.
With people. I mean, I've heard things that I find, this will sound really paradoxical, but it actually makes me feel very grateful and very humble about life. And I know that I can help people, which is extraordinary, and I love what I'm able to do. But you have to be in there witnessing people through something that is sometimes unthinkable. And I've held all of that as well, you know, and then I was sort of speak to my daughter, and she's with my ex-husband, and we've got a good relationship, but, you know, there's sort of communication stuff that we have to manage there, and time zones, and, you know, so there's like, and I'm so happy to be here, and it's just worked out so beautifully, and I'm really excited. I've got a really busy day tomorrow. I've got quite a big meeting as well that's like potentially quite influential on my business, which affects me and my daughter, you know, so there's like, again, it's absolutely, I am good, I am fine, and I am okay, but that stuff's going on as well, and me giving that to you both, you're now like, right, okay, you can hold me, so, you know, we've got this sort of between us now, almost this co-design, that if you girls are sort of dropping off, I've got you, because you two did a big event last night. I see that, like, let me help, let me step in, let me bring some energy into this. Equally, if you see me feeling quite emotional, and you know what I've been experiencing the last few days, you'll step in and support me. And this is why it's so important to do this. And like in romantic relationship, even, how was your day? Yeah. How was yours? Yeah. How was yours? You're right. Yeah.
Totally.
No one knows anything at all, you know, so how are you?
Yeah.
And not good, fine, and okay. And then we find out, and then we can design in what we need or what we do not need in this moment. Like you girls, sounds like you need some like deep restorative rest, and also to nurture these seeds of creativity and find a way of like maybe placing some of that stress down, or delegating, or whatever it might be. And, you know, just having some space around that, and also celebrating what you've achieved and created, and just letting that sort of resonate in and see what comes from it.
Yeah.
But it's a really huge shift when we do that, and that is the sort of root of authenticity. And when we're like, yeah, I'm fine, yeah, I'm good, yeah, I'm okay, that's armor, that's a mask.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like my natural response is, oh, I'm good, I'm fine, because I don't want to like bring my stuff to somebody else, because I'm like, you know, like even in my relationship, I'm like, you have your own shit going on, so I don't want to bring that to you, you know?
For sure.
So, but then it's like you connect deeper. So it's like,
and I love the sentence of like what you said, let me hold you. I think that is such a good sentence. Like, let me hold some of your emotional stuff that you have. And it does create a much deeper bond, even between people who just met. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, it is
I
really
love that
impactful.
sentence.
I know, I love that. Okay. Might have to
Wow.
use that on the pod.
Thank goodness. I'm gonna listen back to this and take notes.
Yeah, seriously. Okay, real quick, before we get into this, I actually do want to jump back for anyone who is listening. Do you have any advice for somebody who is trying to figure out whether or not they need to believe in themselves more, or they just need to be better? Because this is something I struggle with all the time.
So I think what's interesting about that is, I think we all know we're here for more. And then I think the inner critic or the imposter syndrome is the thing on your shoulder, and it jumps in to give you the, don't bother, or you'll never make it, or there's really no point, or, you know, who do you think you are, or all of these things, you know, the sort of not believing in yourself stuff when you're about to make a massive change. So if you think about, like, I don't know, if I said, why don't we all go and do a bungee jump? You know, if we were at the top, understandably, the inner critic's going to be going, what are you doing? What are you thinking? Is the rope tied on? And da-da-da. Because it's designed to keep us safe, and it's designed to make sure that we're okay. And the only way it can do that is by keeping us in the known, also known as your comfort zone. So when you're going in that kind of almost a bungee of thoughts between, I know I want to do more, I want to achieve this, I want to put this message out, I want to create what I'm creating, and then, but am I good enough? It's your inner critic, and it's doing it to try and keep you safe, because it doesn't want you to fail. So I come from this school of thought, which is a bit alternative, I think, and from things that I've seen out there. There's all this stuff that's like, you know, the ego's the enemy, and crush your critic, and like, fine. But one, I think everyone is so overwhelmed that the idea of having to like manage something else, like manifesting and like, right? You know, we just talk about being on the brink.
Literally, you're like, let's add one more thing to our plate of like, let's do better.
I mean, you know, like manifesting, I'm a huge fan of manifesting, by the way. I love manifesting. But if you look at all of the, you know, anything to do with manifesting, it's like, you know, maybe do a vision board, write down what you do want. Don't have any negative thoughts about anything ever. You're like, well, oh my God, I've just had a negative thought about myself or something. And it's
like, hope that doesn't manifest into my reality.
So I feel like this is a bit much, to be honest, right now, to expect people to not have this feeling or these feelings or these thoughts. And I really firmly believe, and I have created something whereby you go into conversation with your inner critic, and the inner critic truly is just a well-meaning friend that has got it wrong. They are an unskillful friend. So they're saying, oh, no, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. You're a bit like an overbearing parent. It's a bit like that, because it doesn't want you to fail. It doesn't want to see you fall and scrape your knee. It wants to keep you safe. So the only way it can do that is by keeping you in the known, in the comfort zone. So this is just to know for you and the listeners, is that when that starts firing, oh my God, you're close. Like, you are close. It's like if you're going for a run or doing some exercise, like you're hitting the wall. And if you can push through it, then you get that euphoria. And it's the same thing. So what you need to do is have a bit like a dossier of evidence. So you need to remind your inner critic of the last time you did hard things. So, hang on. Do you remember the time that we started this podcast, when we had no experience? And do you remember when you edited it on the floor? Do you remember when we couldn't do it? And guess what? We figured it out. Like I say to my little daughter, it's me and her, and I want her to have, like, obviously positive messages, and I just say to her, honey, mummy doesn't know right now, but I'll figure it out. My inner critic might be jumping up and down on my head at that moment, but I'm just trying to be conscious what I'm saying to her is and that's okay. And then I look at the things I have actually figured out when I've been navigating, like, single parenting and divorce on lockdowns and my business and all this sort of stuff. And as we were saying earlier, when you look back at, all the things that you've achieved to last night, your amazing event, like, you figured stuff out. And that's the things that you just need to remind that inner critic, and it will lower its charge. It's like, oh yeah, you're right. Okay.
I love that. That is such a good point. There was one time where I was really struggling with something. I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can do this. And I literally made a list of every single reason why I can't do this. And then on the next side, like, equal bullet points, I made a list of every reason why those reasons were bullshit. Like, I went line for line. That's bullshit because. That's bullshit because. And then by the end of it, I was like, okay, so this was all bullshit. Like, we're very capable, but I don't think I do it enough. So it's like such a good reminder. That's such a good point too. Like, when you're like, oh, all the things that I have done.
Absolutely. Wow, you really came into my life at such
a divine intervention.
Happy to help.
But this really did work out perfect.
Yeah. Again, if we could have done this yesterday before my panel, this is perfect timing.
Well, okay, so kind of just going back to, like, you said you're hitting about your 10-year mark right now. And what brought you to this stage where you're like, this is my passion, this is what I want to do, this is my path to help other people? What kind of brought you to there?
So I remember I was working in London and, I had all the stuff. So I had the big job and I've got the, the status, and I'm successful in inverted commas, and I've done, all these amazing things. And I was just so unhappy. I remember just being ill and I didn't know why, cutting out food groups, and it wasn't that, and trying, didn't have intolerances. I was intolerant to my life, basically. And I remember who is now my ex-husband, but my partner at the time, and being in the kitchen, and we played this amazing game, and you might play it sometimes, and your listeners might, with your partners, which is, and no one gets to win, by the way, but it's a game of who is the most tired. And so you do this, like, I'm really, really tired. Yeah, I'm really tired. Yeah. I'm really, yeah. No one wins. No one ever wins.
Like, we do that with each other.
So no one gets to win this game. And I remember being there thinking, because we were looking forward to a future together and wanting to get married and have a family and stuff. And I was like, I don't want this to be my life. I can't do it like this. But I was really successful in this, sort of niche, and you've got all these kind of people telling you how great it is what you're doing. And a really good friend of mine had just started doing coaching in the States. And at the time in the UK, we're a little bit behind, I would say, in sort of new modalities and healing. We're a couple of years behind in the UK. And it was all very weird and woo-woo. And, oh, God, a coach. And, no one did that. And anyway, she did this guided visualization with me, and I can see all of it, and every single thing came true. It's before I was married. She told me I'd have one daughter, and she told me all this stuff has happened, and my business would be me, because I'd wanted to do something for myself. But, and this probably sounds a bit strange, but I was so convinced I was going to invent something. I was absolutely convinced I was going to invent, like, the new Dyson or something like that. I was just walking, doing my job, just convinced I would stumble across my, that's it. I knew it was going to be something. I knew I was going to do something. And then I just had this moment, I think a bit of a, kind of effort moment as well. But it's like, maybe my invention, maybe the thing that I'm going to do is me. And I mean, I still sort of hoped I might come up with a new Dyson, but I was like, honestly, but I was like, well, I need to start somewhere, and it ain't coming doing the same old thing. So I need to do something. And I'd done this visualization with her in this beautiful session. And then me being me, I am quite type A. So I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it like the best. And so I found out that all of the headquarters of the coach training was in San Francisco in North Bay. And so I came over and I basically lived on and off and did all of the qualifications, then the certifications, then everything else. And I was taking it back and integrating it. And as I was, just life changed. Everything changed for me, really. Just how I got to see the world and what I wanted it to be, and just understanding that I could make a difference to people. And I read this quote a little while ago, and it said that, you know, if you're doing something you love, you'll never want to retire. And I never see me wanting to stop helping, you know, whatever guise it might be in. I never see me ever wanting to stop.
Wow. That is such an interesting timing for us to hear that, because we have been going back and forth with like, should we maybe do something else? You know, because we're like, we have an events business and we've been a little drained by it. And we've been doing it for almost 8 years now. And we are like really, I don't know, like really interested in doing something else. So honestly, even just hearing you say that, like, you'll never want to retire. And I'm like, no, I want to retire like yesterday. So I need to maybe think about that.
Yeah. Like, I was having a conversation with my boyfriend, and we were talking about like when it's opposition or they're growing pains. And so I'm like, but I'm like 8 years in. So like, when do the growing pains stop being growing pains? Then maybe when do I need to pivot a little bit more? So it's just nice to hear you say that you're like, hey, I had to figure everything out again. And you were inventing yourself
completely. And from nothing, you know, and I did sound similar to you. I had one foot in this life that I wanted to create, but I needed to pay the bills. So I was still doing sort of a job in the old industry. And then just when it got to the tipping point, I was able to let go of the old career and do what I'm doing now. Then I did, you know, but I kissed a lot of frogs in that time. I call it frog kissing. Sometimes you've got to, and you girls will know that. I mean, events is tough. It's a hard business, tough hours. And it's great because you create network and you have all this experience. And my friend said to me, because I had a very sort of niche corporate career, which made me so successful because it was the network that I had that I built from nothing. And I'm sure events is big network as well. And I said to her, but I can't lose, you know, I've just put all of my heart and soul, and I was so burnt out and broken that the thought of trying again, I just couldn't. Hence, I'm going to invent Dyson, you know, so like that'll be my answer, my way out. And I just couldn't fathom finding that again. And she said, and she was absolutely right, darling, you won't need to do it again. Like, nothing is wasted, and you'll see. And she was right. And the people that I'd built up with in one way, I was then using and working with as clients. And still now, the majority of my private clients, I used to work in property and construction, which is very, very male. The majority of my private clients are men. I work mainly with men one-to-one. And I'm sure it's because of my experience of working in property and construction, which is heavily male dominated, especially when I worked in that industry. So now the other side of my work, sort of my social media and online courses and sort of more of the trauma work, would be female. But yeah, I've never lost a thing. She was right. And nor will you. You'll never lose anything that you've experienced or grown. You just don't know where it might pop up again. And it's always in the most serendipitous circles.
That's so true. I keep trying to remind myself of that, because I think, you know, just from a founder perspective, I'm sure everyone deals with this, but something that we talk about is like your clients and your customers and everything that you've built, everyone around you, they expect you to deliver your service. Like they're like, that you should keep doing this. This is going well. But like when you're a founder or you're an entrepreneur, you own something of your own, you like kind of know, like, I kind of do need to pivot, or maybe it's just because I just want to pivot, you know, which is a place that we're in. We're like, I want to pivot.
Because as you get older, you evolve and you do change. We have other interests in our life
Beyond,
takes another path sometimes. And I'm going to be 32 this year, and I feel like, dang, starting over doing something else after I've worked on something for 8 years sounds exhausting. And I don't want to start over. So, and at 32, I look at, you know, where my mom was at 32 and thinking, I feel a little behind schedule.
Right.
And then you have to remind yourself of, no, you're not starting over. You're taking all of the knowledge that you've, acquired over the last 32 years of life.
Oh, completely.
And okay, we're gonna take all that and utilize it in just in a new way.
I'm sure you both did last night. I've no doubt that your event that you're bringing all of these women together and giving the gift of empowerment and conversation, like you said, I've no doubt it was so successful because of your experience in the other business, but it's got a soul's purpose that because of the new work that you're doing, and it would stand out, and people attended it and spoke and wanted to be there, and you had the that resonance and that shift that you're both experiencing now, that beautiful exhaustion when you've worked, like that hard day's work, but it's soul's work that you're both experiencing now, and you wouldn't have had that had it not been for the other experience.
And that was something I was even telling her, because with last night, that was our first time ever doing like Smartest Sexy in real life, and I was way more excited about that than the typical like LA events and nightlife scene. And I was like, and we've known for a while, like we've definitely been feeling it for a while, the disconnection between us and like the passion for LA nightlife, especially because the Hollywood scene in LA is a bit soul sucking. And I think as we spend a lot of time on our own like evolution and spiritual practice and growth, and I think we just naturally disconnected from this like world of LA nightlife, Hollywood. I'm sure you're familiar with the fact that a lot of it is just really shallow and kind of dark. And I think over time it just like ate away at us, being in a business and there.
There's a level of toxicity to it, and it just chips away
little by little.
And I think based off of some of the relationships that have unfortunately ended within business, I think it chips away at them as well. And it is something where I'm like, we're finding ourselves kind of growing out of it, and we're like, wow, okay, it might be time to evolve the business and evolve ourselves.
So everything you're saying is just really resonating. Both of us are like, this is great.
and to reassure you, I mean, I'm 42 in July, so I was 32.
To reassure you.
Wow.
Yeah. So you understand how I feel.
I really get it. I really get it.
So when you were starting over, for anyone listening who might be in the same position as we are, like, walk me through what you had to tell yourself to be like, okay, no, we got this. Because I feel like what's difficult is sometimes I'm like, you got this, but I'm like, do I have this? Like, how do you know?
I think in that, the truth is, we don't always know. Like, you mentioned yesterday feeling so nervous before the panel, and it was okay. And like, I didn't know exactly how it would look. And honestly, I don't necessarily know exactly how my business is going to look in 3 years' time. I've come here and it's given me some really great things to think about. In fact, doing big events. So this is how I'd like to do it. So, it's always evolving. And I think that's it. I think we suffer when we become really fixated, and if we were talking in spiritual terms, if we're not surrendering, if we're becoming too attached rather than not being attached, if we're not allowing flow. And I think that this is where again, the inner critic can jump in and be trying to control things for us, again, to try and make us feel okay by sticking with what we know. But it's that sort of constant, almost like recalibrating that actually, look, I am okay. I might not know exactly what's happening. And I kind of developed this mantra for myself, which was that change has never dealt me a bad hand. I just don't necessarily know why this is happening right now at the time. And I have to remind myself of that. And there are things that happen all the time, like you guys talking about the business and other things. And, I have times and things are happening where I'm just constantly blocked. And I know better now, in the sense of I'll be like, right, okay, I'm not going to keep like hammering this thing that is clearly a door that maybe just does not want to open for me. Irrespective of what my ego maybe would have wanted in the past, or how great this potential client might be, or what it might look like. I've got much better at just being like, do you know what? If what's meant for me will not miss me. And here are my values, and these are my standards. This is my benchmark, and I know what I bring, and I live like my sort of, I guess, benchmark for myself is, I sleep really well every night, knowing that I'm an honest person and I do hard work, and I'm trying to make a positive difference, and that's really genuine. And I don't say that lightly. Like, that is because I've worked in very toxic industries as well, and it's horrific, and it does cost you. I swear that was costing me my health. That was why I had to leave, because everything was wrong with me, but nothing was wrong with me, and it was my life. Yeah, I was intolerant to my life. So I needed to change things, but you don't have to do it all at once either for people listening. It's not like, oh, wow, I need to change literally everything. It's how I feel. I started off, like I say, you know, I'm not going to lie and say it's an instant fix. It's not. It's starting, taking one step.
Right.
And then I'm sure both of you take a step and the next one will appear. But it's not necessarily a path that you can definitely see right now. If I do this and this and this and this and this, I'll be there. I'll do this. And then ping, something pops up and it might not be what you expect. So it's just always being able to get back to who you are, reassuring yourself that, you know, I am safe, I'm okay. And then trusting your instincts and going along with that. And at the same time, not being too attached to how it might look. I really want a partner. I really want a boyfriend. I really want a relationship. Okay. Oh, but I want him to be this. Right.
Wow.
Right. Okay. So that's, yes. You know, so like, then do you really want a loving, perfect soulmate for you that's going to be the most, or do you want this image that you've decided that you must have? Because that's two different things.
True.
Very. Yes. I will say that because I hadn't dated anyone for about 10 years. And then a little over a year ago, I met my boyfriend at a wedding, and he is nothing that I thought what I wanted in my head. And I'm like, wow, we should never say never, because you will eat your words.
True.
So it's just interesting. Like, even for your life, you of course can like visualize what you want and manifest the things that you want, but also have like an open heart and an open mind to like the things that can be better for you than you even imagined.
Yeah, because we don't necessarily know what is aligned with our highest good. And if you do have a sense of a higher power, you have to like, you know, there's people moving strings around. And if we're going to align, we've got to let some things happen.
So true. My mom always says that, like when I used to freak out about anything, she would be like, but how do you know what's coming isn't better? Yeah. And like every time she would be, I'm like, damn, you're right. I don't know. So that is such a good point.
No, definitely. Now with making the decision to change, was there a sense of failure and shame that came with making that decision, like letting go of something that you had built for a very long time? Because at 32, you probably felt like, I'm in my life. Was there any sense or feeling of failure and then shame that came along with that? And if there was, can you tell us about that? If there wasn't, how would you help someone through that feeling if they have that?
Sure. So I think I'm thinking about like definitely my career, but also my divorce is a great example of, you know, sort of failure and shame. And I think in both of those cases, when I just knew in both of those cases, it was my decision to leave the marriage and nothing terrible had happened. I was having an affair with a neighbor or whatever, you know, it just wasn't right anymore. And the same with my old career. There was nothing wrong in inverted commas, but I couldn't be in that anymore. Like, I'm someone that just can't be with something that's inauthentic. I just can't. I mean, then it will literally make me sick. I don't think I've spoken about this before, but I used to, towards the end of my marriage, and of course just trying to, you know, either ignore it or not, like I literally truly became allergic to my very expensive platinum diamond engagement and wedding ring.
Yep.
Wow.
I mean, my body I would like have to take them off because my ring finger would become inflamed, and I'd had everything. I had a steroid cream. I left them off. I got them. I mean, these were absolutely beautiful. There was nothing wrong with it. Like, my body was like,
it was platinum, so it was doing just fine.
It was doing just fine. I mean, I tried all the stuff. My body was like, this has to come off. And I know that sounds insane.
No, it's true. Your body knows.
And like my job, there was nothing wrong with me, but I was ill all the time, you know, because I was trying to force myself into something that wasn't right. So there was that element, was that I simply could not be, because I could feel it was costing my health in both, I mean, not just my fingers, but, you know, my mental health and anxiety. And I was very conscious in leaving my marriage with my daughter, obviously, and trying to retain a positive relationship with my ex, which we have a really good relationship for her. But there are definitely feelings of, with work, you know, but I'd worked for all of this. Oh, but you know, what are you going to change your title to on LinkedIn? I've deleted LinkedIn, everyone. It's the best thing I've ever done. Like, I'm not on it at all. So
I love that.
Who cares? Like, you know, you want to find me, what's my title? What does it matter? Like, I don't even have it anymore. It's you know, one less thing to worry about. And it's really interesting where you get attached to titles and labels. Someone's wife. I'm no longer. I'm a single mother, apparently, you know, or whatever title it might be now. I mean, I'm still myself completely, but, you know, there are all these things that people give to you. And this is the thing with like shame, you know, I'm self-employed, I'm unemployed, I'm a consultant, I'm freelance, I'm a, you know, whatever, fine. If you need to give me a title, that's great. But I know what I'm doing. I know, and I more than that, I know what I'm doing this for. I was leaving my marriage for myself and also to make sure that I was the best version of myself for my daughter and the right thing for my ex, the right thing for all of us, truly, as a, you know, still as a family, but in a different guise.
Right.
With work, I had to leave that because it was making me ill. That's not also in service to the organization that might have been paying me. And I found a calling beyond that lifestyle to be able to offer something and truly help people. I truly think people like, you're really brave. I didn't have a choice. I really don't think I had a choice in either.
Right.
Like I had to try.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying it's like, oh, everyone jump off and you know, it's brilliant and you swim straight away. But I don't think many people will falter too much. It's the worst part in everything for me has always been, and I sort of feel like you girls are talking about this now as well. It's that bit before you do it. It's when you don't know the answer. Because if you knew the answer, you'd be doing it.
Yeah.
Because if you knew the answer, we'd do it. If someone turned up and I went, oh, don't worry, babe, I've got you. Look, do this. And you went, oh, thanks. Perfect.
I literally I
Yeah,
said that
like
to
a
my
magic
mom.
genie.
I was like, I am praying. I have very strong testimony in prayer, and so I'm praying every day. I'm thinking, when does that little sign come? When does that little sign come of like, hey, this is what you got to do.
Right.
Yeah, you're praying for Dyson. You're going to make Dyson. Yeah. So this is it. You know, you're looking for. It was that bit that I found the most sort of agonizing, to
Yeah.
be honest. The bit where I'm still in one place, but I know I need to be somewhere else. I don't exactly know what that is, but I can't be where I am. And you're doing this dance between, and then that's when the shoulds come in, which is the territory of the inner critic and shame, which is, oh, I should be happier, or I won't go on, I don't know, whatever it might be at this school, it might be difficult if we're not together, or, you know, at work, and what will people say that I used to work with, or what if it doesn't work out? Honestly, none of it has ever crossed my mind the second I've made the leap.
So
it
true.
Sat in my head the whole time, and I mean, in some instances, you know, I didn't rush out of my marriage. I tried to do a number of things to make that work, and I'm grateful for that time to get to the right decision, and also to have done as much as I could have done. But the agony, the absolute agony in all of those situations was the you know, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, up and down, up and down, up and down, and then as soon as you leap, absolutely fine.
Well, I think it's the resistance. Like anytime we're in resistance is when it's like you're going to feel the worst. And then the minute it's actually over, anything, you know, you're like, okay, well now I'm here.
Yeah.
So now all I can do is take the next step. And there's this quote that I love, and it says, evictions in our life don't come unless they're invited. And I think that's so true. You know, like when it's like, oh, I'm allergic to my ring and I have to get out of this. It's like some part of you, even though you're like, I should stay because I built this life. But some part of you knows that there's more, or wants more, or something like that. So I think for a lot of people, they get like very stressed out about the moments of change and things like that. But I do believe in like a subconscious or like a bigger, you know, entity that's like, no, there's something better on the other side. Like at somewhere inside you, this was invited. You just maybe don't know it. And I look back and everything that ended for us or me or anything was always for the better. So I do try to remind myself of that. But every time a new one comes up, I'm like, shit, I don't know. So I'm still working on that part. But going back to what you were saying about grief and shame, this is super interesting for us because we've never discussed this on the podcast. So I'm just like, I have so many questions on behalf of our listeners. So I think the first thing I want to talk about is shame, because I would say like in most friend circles, like we don't really openly discuss this, obviously, because by nature of shame, it is shameful or it feels shameful. So I feel like unless you're going to therapy, there's a good chance you're not really thinking about this. I mean, I'm curious to see if people even know that they're hoarding shame. You know, are they even aware of that? Like what has been your experience with that?
I would say that most people know that they have shame, that they feel shame about something. If I asked you both to tell me something you feel ashamed about, you'd be able to come up with something. The thing is that I think we're less aware of is shame language and how it's manifesting. The thing with shame is so isolating. It's like being in a cave and it's just you and you're looking out on everyone else and you feel so different and you feel that it is only you that could possibly feel this way, you know, or be bad or whatever it might be. And shame language is felt. It's actually very hard to talk about shame, to your point, where people know they've got it. It's really hard to give language to shame. Shame is I am. So if I gave you an example, if I said to you, oh, girls that I'm really missing, Amber, my daughter, I feel like I've been a bit of a bad mummy lately. Like, that's guilt. If I said to you, oh, you know, I've made this choice to come on this trip and I've not seen her and I've missed a performance today, I am a bad mother. Like, I feel physically sick saying that. Right now I feel nauseous. Like, I am a bad mother. Oh, that's shame. So any I am, and it's felt, it lives in your system. It's that feeling, that horrible feeling, I am. So when I do my work in trauma leaves behind shame. Trauma can be something you've seen, doesn't have to be something that happened to you. Trauma is whatever event, we get left with shame in some way that we should have acted differently, or maybe we could have influenced the result. It's like I was witnessing, perhaps you'd had an accident and I wished I could have helped, you know. But we end up with shame language. I am unlovable. I am unworthy. I am a bad mother. I am a failure. You know, and that's what ends up in your system. And then that's where, when you believe that, that's a lens you start seeing the world through. And then that's obviously not going to encourage connection, because I believe I am a failure. I believe that I am helpless and hopeless and weak. And so then I'm picking relationships. I'm maybe not coming to your event because I feel like I'm, you know, a disaster, or I'm not going to, like, you know, I have people in the things that people might be saying about that they really believe they are disgusting. Now, sometimes that's something that's been given to them, maybe by, you know, a caregiver, or someone's actually said it as well. So do I think people are aware of shame? I think people feel ashamed. I don't think people have the language to understand what it is. And I don't think there's enough education out there as to how it's happened. And most of the time, honestly, it's trauma. And also how to get it out again.
Right. That was what I was wondering. I'm like, oh shit, where do we go from here?
Well, the first step really is understanding that that's what it is. And if there's been an event in your life, of which, as I say, like, it can be a number of different things that still affects you now. And then where in that is the underlying limiting belief that somehow you had something to do with it. So I grew up with a very violent father and used to, you know, hit me and things like that. And I remember for years, in fact, until I was my mid-30s, I still carried a belief that I must have made him do it. Because, of course, you know. Now, I was the age that my daughter is now. She's 6.5. And he punched me in the face in a restaurant once, I remember, on a holiday. And my parents colluded to make it seem like a positive thing, because boys in my school were starting to get nosebleeds in adolescence around that age. And I could see them both looking. Clearly, they knew that this was gone a bit too far. And they colluded with each other and went, oh, you know, but you did say you'd never had a nosebleed at school before, as if it was a kind of weird gift. Honestly, until I was about 35, 36, when I had EMDR on myself, I believed that I am naughty, I am bad, that I must have in some way made him do that. Now, one of the ways of working through that for me was to put my daughter in that vision in that restaurant. I mean, it literally like breaks my heart, and also wants me to go and like commit murder when I think about that. You know, like the lioness in me is like my, you know, and in no way could that have been her fault. So therefore, in no way could that possibly have been my fault. But honestly, you grow up with these messages and you think, I am bad. And so the only cure for shame is self-compassion. Now, that's one way of doing it if it's a childhood memory. And I use this a lot with clients. I've got a lot of male clients that have experienced things in their childhood, and it shows up in public speaking actually quite often, or things like that, where they were shamed, maybe in a classroom or asking a question. And the thing with shame is we don't often get an explanation. So even if it's a well-meaning parent that's like, oh, don't worry about that, or never mind, or don't look, or oh, it's just Uncle Terry, you know, whatever, like, never mind. We don't get to close that cycle because our young brain can't understand what's happening. And so we come away with this sort of confusion and curiosity, and we might take on some shame about that. So by placing a child that you know, whether it's your own or a niece or a nephew or a cousin or just a friend's child, into a scene that was the age that you were, and you honestly think, could they have done any differently? Like, if I, trigger warning again, but sexual assault, but if I'm doing a sexual assault sort of trauma session with someone, quite a lot of the time, and I think you two will really understand this in your listenership, if there's been alcohol involved, if there's maybe been some dating or something, a lot of people I'm working with, they somehow think they were to blame in some way, shape or form.
Yeah.
And they carry a lot of shame around it. And I say, put your best friend in that bed and you tell me if it was her fault. And every single time, absolutely not. And it's like, well, that is what we need to focus on here.
Yeah.
Did she lead him on? Was her no not no enough? Was, whatever the scenario, and I'm using male, female here, but there's obviously very, very different scenarios as well. Put your best friend in that bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, oh God, no. So that's quite a stark example, but it's real. This week I've seen 7 clients of that 4 I talked about this subject, so it's real.
No, it is. And I remember too, because even in that situation, unfortunately, a lot of women have been in situations where they're, anything like that. And there was a few years ago when I was drugged by somebody, and I remember the next day after I got out of the ER, the only thing I could say to you is, I feel so stupid. And she was like, I'm going to kill this person. So I don't know why you feel stupid. I was like,
why do you feel dumb?
I was sitting there in the car, like crying.
I'm grabbing my pitchfork. I don't even know where to get a pitchfork, but I am going to get one.
I remember that. I was sitting in the car, I was crying, and I was like, and she was like, well, I'm going to kill him. And I was like, well, I feel really stupid. So I want to just ignore this. I just want to move on. I don't want to, I feel so dumb for being in that situation. And she was like, no. But it's so crazy how quickly we go there.
Yeah.
I mean, immediately, like I went to the hospital, and then the next day I was immediately like, I'm the dumbest person in the world. And it was like how we get there so fast, I don't know. Is that more common with women, or is it?
I think maybe in sexual situations, I think there is just cultural shame about sex. And I think sometimes depending on different religion, and I think I think we can carry a lot of stuff anyway. And I think as women, we're not necessarily quite in the place yet where we feel just completely liberated with whatever our choices might be and totally free of shame. I think it can come with like free love with a side order of shame, a side shot of shame about like, oh, I had a great time, but should I have, I think a lot of that societal that we still carry. I think a lot of that is not our own that we still carry. But yeah, I would say probably in those scenarios more common with women. But yeah, for people listening, the language is I am. Find out what your I am is from the underlying limiting belief that you may hold, and just know that the only cure for shame is self-compassion. So find either, like I said, that was an example of childhood trauma, is someone that you love that's around that age, or put someone else in the situation, in the image that you've got in your mind, or find in a time that you can be, that you did have really beautiful self-compassion for yourselves, like you two, just from our brief conversation, but like working on that event last night and working through, even though you were deeply nervous, and creating something beautiful for people, like that is a piece of self-compassion you can have, knowing why you're doing this. It's not an ego project. It's not vanity. It's not to be on the LA Hollywood scene. It's to, create something with legacy and purpose. So, even like offering that compassion to yourself.
Yeah, that's a great point. Oh, thank you.
Again, I'm gonna listen back to this.
I know. I'm like, do you want to be a third host on this? Like, do
you want the Smart and Sexy podcast? Because I feel like some of you are crushing it.
Do you want this IP?
We'll just like kind of hand it over, and I will listen every time.
Look, I mean, it will solve some of your career issues. So yeah, I'll tap into you, babe. No worries. Give me the events business.
You can have that one for free.
Absolutely.
That one you can just have.
Something I kind of just like want to jump into is another topic we've never discussed, and I think every person on this planet has felt, is loneliness. And I know that in the times that I have truly felt like the word lonely, there was also a level of embarrassment around admitting that you're lonely. And I come from a mom who is like, she raised my brother and I fully by herself. My biological father was fully out of the picture, and she held it down and showed so much independence and strength, and didn't even like really date when I was younger. She made sure like my brother and I felt that we had our mom fully. And so to watch her be so independent and then get into my adult years and feel, wow, I might like tear up a little bit, to feel loneliness, I felt so much embarrassment like to admit that. I think I told you that like so long ago. So I'm just, wow, you guys, I'm so sorry.
Every time she talks about her mom, she cries. So I was waiting for it. I was like, oh, the mom came out. Tears are coming out.
I love my mom so much. So like, oh,
Yeah.
but
I love your mom. She's amazing.
She's the best.
she really is just phenomenal. But so to like, what was the advice you'd give to someone who feels embarrassment about talking about loneliness and being lonely?
First, one thing I want to say is, and you did nothing wrong with it, but it's interesting that you said I'm sorry when you started crying. But that's something else that we do, is we apologize for emotion. So much like the loneliness, the shame, the embarrassment, the apology. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I see you? I'm really sorry. I feel like would you mind if I just wanted to? It's almost like we excuse the fact that we want connection, or that we're not feeling great, or I'm emotional. I apologize first. I'm sorry. I'm crying. Like I say to my daughter, like, and I love that with your mum, and thank you, because I'm not dating. Like I try and keep it like really, I mean, hardly ever. I mean, mainly because they're terrible, but like also for my daughter, like just, I've got a cat, it's fine. Like, you know, but no, for my daughter, you know, I want her to feel like it's me and her. And I love that you've said that, because that's what I'm trying to emulate for her, and her seeing me, you know, doing work and being happy and just creating a life, and her, you know, her feeling the center of my world, which she is. And so I love you sharing that. Thank you. But yeah, I think this loneliness, it's epidemic. And I get a lot of messages about friendships as well. So that you can be so lonely in relationship. You can be so lonely in friendship groups, or shall we say like frenemy groups. And I get so many messages from people that have been, you know, they know, you know, when it's off, right? The vibes are off, and you're not being treated well by that friend or the partner or a work colleague, and you know, when you're the one that's being cast aside, and it's a horrible feeling. And
truly,
it's the worst feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that it's almost worse to feel lonely in a relationship than on your own.
I agree.
It's like, or in a friendship, you know, in anything.
No, I completely agree with that.
Because you've got autonomy yourself.
Right.
I can choose, and I can go out, and I'm like, you know, meet whoever I want and do whatever I like. But when you're being isolated within relationship systems, family, friendships, romantic, work, it's the most awful feeling, because you know something's up, but it's almost like a ticking time bomb. Just at what point will this go? And it's so destabilizing. It's like the moment that you can feel the floors going from underneath you, and it's horrible. So I would say to people, if you feel it, I'm sorry, but it's a possibility, it's true. If it's something like we've just discussed that you're feeling in a relationship system, you can ask. And also the other thing is finding this stability on your own. So, but there is absolutely no shame in loneliness. Like I think a friend of mine, she had a very long-term relationship and has had a job in a certain place for a really long time. So sort of not meeting new people. And she used Bumble, but the Bumble meeting up bit. Didn't want another relationship, but the Bumble making friends, and has made some terrific friends through that. Like, and really people that are in the same place of her, you know, in her life as her now. And so I think there are really beautiful places. I think it's probably the best use for apps, to be honest, is like meeting genuine friends.
No,
and I think
definitely.
I think this is where things like technology can be really helpful. For me, you know, going through, the thing that I think I've realized as well is that people are often, even your best mates, great family members, whoever, when you're going on a change or a journey or something, people are not on that path at the exact moment that you are. Even the most amazing support group, grief, change, whatever, they can be in and out, but they've got their own lives. And then we feel guilty about over leaning on them. Oh, I've already messaged Celeste. Oh, I can't ask her again. Or it's the middle of the night. You know, a friend of mine's just lost his mum, and he's in Europe. And I just messaged saying, look, I'm in LA. I'm awake at a different time to you. If you want to just put the phone on, don't even have to speak. If you just want me on the other end of the phone, like if you want to message, if you just want that kind of connection. So I would encourage people listening that maybe have someone that they think might be lonely in their life as well. You can offer things like that. People don't need you to solve the problem for them. That's the other thing. You know how we're all quite overwhelmed. We're like, I'd really love to help, but I'm at max.
Yeah.
So I think that's the other thing. But you don't need to go all in. You don't need to fix it. You can just witness.
Right.
And that is enough most of the time. Because some of my greatest friends I've met fairly recently, you know, doing retreats, events. You know, I had to put a bit like the brick road and the next one coming alive. You do have to put yourself out there. And if you're finding, say, that inauthenticity in like that hot, I'm sure we've all had it before, like the frenemy situation. It's awful and it sucks. But when they're out of your life, so much the better. It might be a bit awkward to start with. You think, oh, how's it going to be if I see it? It's always fine. It might not be very nice for a little bit. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but it's always better afterwards.
Yes.
Or you get really lucky and they just kind of like, it just phases out. It's like, you weren't supposed to be in my life anyway. So like, we don't really run into each other. Where like our circles actually don't really touch anymore.
Exactly. And people are in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And actually that can give some grace to the connection, because even if maybe the ending wasn't lovely, you can still look back on some of the things or the lessons that you shared or the experiences and take something from that and go, actually, that was really great. So I'm going to have that and I'm going to be pleased, and that gives me closure, and I'm going to move on. But yeah, anyone feeling really lonely, firstly, please know that most people are. And firstly, please just have a look then at maybe where you have become disconnected from yourself. Did you self-abandon in a romantic relationship and you've come out and you've realized that none of your friends are really around because actually you had, you know, self-abandoned? What work do you need to do on yourself there? Was it that you have become so consumed with trying to keep a boss happy or a job that you hated that you again didn't maintain your health or social setup or whatever it might be? Or is it that you're finding yourself just, you know, with a group of people and it's just not where you are in your life right now, and that's okay. Like maybe stop trying to make it fit. I went to this terrific sort of gong bath event at the beginning of the year in London, and one girl spoke up and she said, it was January, you know, like a new year, and she said, I just know I've got to make changes. I know I've got to make a lot of changes in my life, friendships, relationships, everything. I literally didn't know where to start, so I booked this. And the instructor was terrific, who I know, and she said, people put your hands up if you're willing to swap numbers. And she left with, you know, no less than 3 or 4 numbers of people simply to go and meet up at something again.
Right.
So
I love that. That's great.
Yeah. I mean, just take a step.
Yeah.
A bit like the work, a bit like ask for help as well. And also, you know, then if you've got people that you're worried about and also you're like, oh, you know, I've got to do it. Oh, I really want to help them. Just know that witnessing them is enough. You don't have to fix it and hold it.
Yeah,
I think that's
I love
the other
that.
thing.
Yeah, I remember it took me a while because I went through a period of being pretty lonely in my life, but it was my first time. And so it took me a while to even realize what it was. You know, like I was like, because I grew up super independent as an only child, and my mom worked a lot. So I had been so used to being on my own for so long. And then, you know, I had moved out of the house very young, but I had lived with her for years. And then I moved out on my own, and then I went through a breakup. And so it took me a long time to even figure out, I'm like, oh shit, this is loneliness. You know, like I didn't realize it. And I remember I went through then a few months of kind of like feeling kind of bad for myself, but not talking about it with anyone. And then there was one night where I was taking a bath and I was listening to a book on Audible, and I was like, okay, wait a minute. I was like, I don't need to feel bad about this. I can feel lonely without feeling bad about feeling lonely. Like lonely is a description of how I feel. It is not a problem, you know? And if I want to solve it, then great. And if I want to just sit and be sad, then great. But like, you know, and so then once I kind of told myself, okay, but this descriptive word is not going to like tell me that I'm, you know, a bad person or something. And that's actually how I started to like get more in touch with it, you know, because I stopped like resenting it or resisting it. I was just like, okay, I know I am feeling this way.
And like anything, I think it can just be a warning. Like, okay, I'm feeling really lonely. That's interesting. I'm surrounded by people, or I'm not, or whatever. Okay, that's interesting. Like, why am I feeling lonely? Have I just been with people that actually maybe make me feel worse? You know, or have I not been honoring certain, just use it as a lens of data gathering, information, questioning. Like loneliness, exactly to your point, which is amazing, is information. And apparently, I need to fact check this, but I was told by someone that apparently the word problem in Latin means you're stood in front of the solution. So, if you're feeling something.
I hope that's true, because
So
I
do
love
I.
that.
Great one.
Let's just say it.
Yeah. It's true today.
If not, you just made that up, and we're taking
We're
it
running
with
with
us.
it.
It was actually Spooky Sarah that made it up, who's like a sort of terrific medium and everything else. But I'm going with it. I liked it. Don't question her. Yeah. So apparently it means that you're sort of stood in front of the solution. So when you're feeling something, whatever that feeling may be, use it as information. Try not to judge it. Be curious. If you're using that lens of curiosity, then, okay, I'm feeling lonely. That's interesting. What have I either not been doing, or what have I been doing? What may have contributed to this? And then a bit like your what can I do, what can't I do list, do that. Take that as an exercise. Or another one is to write down all the things that maybe you're feeling out of control about. I'm feeling out of control. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm very stressed. I'm feeling lonely. Write down all the things you're feeling that are out of control, and take a big pen and you scrub out everything that genuinely you can't do anything about. And then the ones that you can, take one or two forward and make an action. So what's something I could do? I could reach out. I could ask to meet someone for a coffee. I could book a ticket to something round the corner and pop down there and just see.
Right. I love that. Just take away everything you can't control.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, well, we could have kept this going for 10 episodes.
Yeah. Wow.
That could go forever. But I do want to thank you so much
thank you.
for being here today.
This was I think this is my favorite episode.
I know. Seriously, I was thinking about that. I was like, shit, this is like our best episode. Well, I can't say best because we've had other guests that were different, but like this was definitely my favorite so far. I was like, oh my God, this is so good.
It was my favorite even out of all of our solo episodes.
I know, right? No, seriously. So I do want to thank you for that. And one way that we always end every single episode is with our sexy. So this is something that you find sexy, you find attractive, could be dating, could be personal, could be about any gender, anything. Do you want to go first? Do you want us to go first?
Oh, why don't I go in the middle?
Okay. Great. Kelsey's going to go first.
Oh, me. Okay. My sexiest thing is my man's pep talks. I found a partner who has just been like a godsend to me, and he, anytime I'm like just feeling like I need to have that like, hey, you're gonna be great, and this is gonna be amazing, and he holds me up when there are moments where I'm like, I'm really tired and I can't do this.
Yeah.
So last night when I was feeling a little bit nervous, when the nerves did finally set in for me, I called him and he was just like so reassuring and great. He's like, I'm not there physically, but I'm there with you emotionally. I am so emotional. What is going on? He's going to listen to this episode and be like, what was happening to you? You were so tired. But I'm just very grateful to have a partner who has been so great for me. So that's my sexiest thing.
Yay!
Someone else go.
Well, she's going in the middle, so
A sexy thing, I think a very, very attractive quality. So both romantic partners, and if we're picking up just on that friendship chat as well, things that I would look for in friendships, connections, everything, is this kind of someone that can just honestly just tell you their truth. And I mean that not in a like, here's my truth way, just someone that can really go, this is what I'm all about. This is what I'm not all about. This is what I'm here for. And you're like, okay, because then I can choose.
Yeah.
And I like that. And the same with friendships and the same with anything really. But in a man, I like a man that can just sort of show up fully and knows himself. Because it also shows that he does actually know himself, therefore must have done a little bit of work. And to me, I think that's divine.
I love that. That's a good one too. Okay, mine is a bit specific. So whenever Kelsey and I like do an event or we used to work or anything like that, we would always like recap the night with like our feedback. And we did this for years. Like we used to do this at 3:00 in the morning, 4:00 in the morning, even though we were so tired. And we would like go over like what could have been better in our notes and things like that. This isn't about you, sorry, but you were what started it.
Wow,
it was inspired by you. It was inspired by you, but it's not about you. But so my sexiest thing is a partner or somebody who does that with you, who recaps like your world or moments in your life, no matter how late it is, no matter if they're tired. And it's just because it's like you care enough to not just say, oh, that was great. it was like, okay, here's what I liked. Here's what I think we could change. Here's what we can do better, you know, and it's my world and it's my career and it's my life, but it's like you caring to give me that feedback and kind of like go back and forth with me and not just say it was great or not just brush it aside, even though it's late, even though we're both tired. That to me is like, that is my sexy.
Okay, so just really quick, even though that wasn't about me, rude, but
I
even
mean,
though
you
that
can take
wasn't
credit.
about me, I am very happy for you that you have another person outside of me, because I think for many years we relied on one another, which was great and totally okay.
Yeah.
But I'm very happy for both of us that we have now found ourselves in healthy dynamics with other people,
Right.
that can also be that person, so we don't always have to like,
Right.
when the other person is equally as tired, you can go to another person and I can go to another person, and we can have the pep talks and the recaps. That just shows like strength in multiple partners.
Totally.
And
I love that.
it makes me happy for you that you have someone.
Same. And then we did learn though that when we want to scream, we have to go to each other because they don't like when we scream.
Yeah. They're like, it's not necessary for us to get
Because
upset
we get emotional in our recaps.
yeah, there's passion. There's passion behind the recaps.
Yeah, and both of our boyfriends are like, hey,
It's okay. We can say this with calmness in our voice. And we're like, but can we? We feel passionate about
so
this.
today we did learn that when we want to scream, we go to each other.
I think there's a certain pitch that we reach as women, and they're just like,
Oh, please.
There is a pitch.
yeah, they're like, oh
It is
God,
that.
please no.
And it's
please
like,
no.
we're not angry.
No, it's excited
It's just,
usually.
yeah, it's just, we're excited.
I say, I'm like, there is so much passion that we feel that we have to be louder about it.
See, we did learn that. Okay, well, those are our sexy sexies. You guys, thank you so much for tuning in. You guys know where to find us, Smart as Sexy on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all of those places. Where can they find you?
So at Annalie Howling, which is Instagram, and TikTok is at Annalie Howling, and AnnalieHowling.com. And there are some gorgeous courses available if anyone wants to know more about shame, the inner critic, some things we talked about today. So yeah.
Amazing. Honestly,
Yeah,
I might take a
I was
course.
like, I am signing up.
Sign me up.
I'm going to sign you up.
Thank you so much for being here today. This was incredible, and we'll be back next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank